Hello dear viewers, I am Dr. Sharanjeet, Professor of Law at the Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law with a teaching and research experience of over 20 years. Today, we will be focusing on the aftercare of released prisoners. The concept of aftercare has been rightly observed by J.E.H. Williams. According to him, the primary aim of rehabilitation for a prisoner is to make the transition from the prison community to the free society as smooth and painless as possible by giving the prisoner financial and material assistance, psychological instruction, counseling and guidance, and by offering or imposing some degree of continuing supervision where this is desirable. Help may be needed in obtaining employment, in obtaining accommodation, in rehabilitation in the family, in setting various debts incurred while he was in custody or prior thereto, and in countless other directions. So, dear viewers, with a hope for a crime-free society, we embark on this interesting journey of understanding the aftercare mechanism. The penal policy globally focuses on the reformation of the offender and his reintegration into the society. Any penal philosophy that focuses on the criminal only during the time he is in prison and completely ignores him after his release will not yield any long-term results in the reformation, rehabilitation and reintegration of the released prisoner. Hence, aftercare of the prisoner is immensely important to ensure that the social, economic and psychological problems of the prisoner are addressed. Dear viewers, aftercare is immensely important to assist in the holistic development of the individual in the process of physical, mental, vocational, economic, social and attitudinal post-release adjustment and his ultimate rehabilitation. Aftercare plays an important part in any integrated program of crime prevention. In the absence of proper aftercare and strict follow-up, the best of penological practices will be meaningless. The hardest part of punishment that ex-prisoners, particularly the young ex-prisoners, will have to face is when they come out of the correctional institution. As per the report of the Central Social Welfare Board, the term aftercare refers to the program and services organized for the rehabilitation of inmates from the correctional institutions. It may be defined as any program or service organized for the rehabilitation of inmates released from institutions or persons suffering from physical or social handicaps on account of circumstances beyond their control. It is a voluntary act when the inmate is free to accept or reject the aftercare. With the introductory part, now we shall be focusing on the objectives of aftercare. The new thinking focusing on a strong aftercare mechanism is based on the essential premise that since crime is a social fact and a human act, the process of dealing with a criminal does not come to an end after the offence has been legally defined and a penalty imposed on the offender in accordance with the law. It is also necessary to understand the crime as a social and individual phenomena. The concept of aftercare for the released prisoners owes its origins to the penological thought that regards reformation and rehabilitation as the ultimate aim of the criminal justice administration. Aftercare, being a link of vital importance in the correctional cycle, has been conceived as an approach and as a service designed to reduce the offender's social isolation and dependence, help him get over his social handicaps, remove the stigma that darkens his or her present and future lives because of the jail term, and finally accelerate the process of his or her rehabilitation as a mentally, socially and vocationally well-adjusted person. Some of the important objectives of the aftercare mechanism are as follows. Firstly, to extend help, guidance and support to the released prisoner and help him reintegrate into the society. The prisoner, while undergoing the prison term, may feel socially cut off and alien to the new world, and after his release from the prison, he may suffer from social, economic and psychological difficulties. Thus, through an effective aftercare system and pre-release counseling, he may integrate back into the society with more comfort and a positive outlook. Secondly, crime prevention by the released prisoners is highly imperative for the success of the criminal justice administration system. Aftercare services help ensuring that the criminal does not relapse into the crime again. The third objective is that this system helps the released prisoner settle back into the society. This is particularly important with regards to juvenile offenders, as they may require a lot of social and family support to reintegrate as useful and law-abiding members of the society. It is immensely important to prevent recidivism among the prisoners, and aftercare can help in doing the same. Fourthly, aftercare helps restore the self-confidence of the released prisoners. It fosters an inclusive approach. Aftercare helps ensure the economic independence of the released prisoners. During prison life, the convicts are taught various vocations and skills. In the context of the state of Punjab, on the release of a prisoner, he or she is issued a certificate specifying the vocational training undergone by the prisoner. This certificate can help him or her find a job post-release. There is no denying the fact that ordinarily a released prisoner is viewed with suspicion and distrust, and for him or her getting a job becomes very difficult. The societal outlook for employing such people is not positive. To tide over this problem, the prison departments of various states have ventured into commercial establishments to provide gainful employment to the released convicts. In the state of Punjab, the state prison department has opened petrol pumps to provide gainful employment to the released prisoners. Another important objective of the aftercare program is to help the released prisoner through counseling sessions, adjust his habits, attitudes, approaches, and values to a rational appreciation of social responsibility and the requirements of community living. Dear viewers, now we shall discuss the procedure for aftercare. It is important to note that aftercare and follow-up services are not required for every inmate leaving the prison. A large number of prisoners coming from rural agrarian societies or business communities are generally accepted back by their families. They are re-assimilated in the society without much difficulty. They require only some continued contact with their kin and some pre-release counseling to bridge the gap between their in-house prison life and a free society. Aftercare can be understood from two perspectives. In its narrow sense, it is somewhat similar to probation, where the released prisoner is put under the care of a probation officer performing the role of a social worker. In its wider sense, aftercare implies all efforts to enable the prisoner to overcome all the various social, psychological problems after his release. Under the treatment philosophy, the aftercare work in a way should commence as soon as the convict begins his prison life. In its very rudimentary form, it simply means that at the time of departure, the prisoner is given some money by the state from his savings, made out of the wages earned in the prison, a set of clothes to equip him for the new life. The selection of prisoners for aftercare is an important task. As per the Model Prisons Manual 2016, all convicts shall be brought under the ambit of aftercare and rehabilitation. The district probation officer shall be the nodal agency to contact for the purpose of aftercare and rehabilitation. Secondly, the case management framework needs to be improved. This framework is required to ensure continuity in any inmate's rehabilitative process before and after he is released. The following services are involved in the above framework. First, to assess an inmate's individual needs. Secondly, to identify the appropriate services that meet his needs. Next, to develop a comprehensive plan of service tailored to the individual. Fourth, to advocate the client's access to and use of the services. And lastly, to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the delivery of these services. Under this proposed framework, aftercare problems of an individual shall be treated in their totality and not in isolation. Not only the individual, but his whole social situation must be tackled at the same time. It is further felt that the aftercare program has to be phased in to increase its effectiveness. It can be broadly phased into: first, while the individual is under institutional care and treatment; second, immediately after release from the institution; and lastly, post-release period. Here it is important to note that the 2016 Model Prison Manual casts the responsibility on the state to devise and develop mechanisms for the rehabilitation of the released convicts. For this purpose, the discharged prisoners' aftercare and rehabilitation committees shall be set up at the district level, which shall comprise the following: the district magistrate shall be the chairperson, the superintendent of prisons, convener, the district probation officer as a member. Here it is significant to note that the above mentioned committees shall be responsible for devising the mechanisms for rehabilitation and aftercare for the released prisoners. While devising the mechanism and extending help, special attention shall be paid to the protection and post-release care and help of children, young persons, women, sick, old, infirm, and handicapped persons. It is felt that special emphasis should be laid on the aftercare of habitual offenders if they so request. For the proper success of this program, it is envisaged that the planning for aftercare be initiated immediately after an inmate is admitted to the correctional institution and continue until the convict prisoner is finally released. From the time of a prisoner's admission into the prison, he shall be assisted in maintaining or establishing such relations with persons or agencies outside the institution so as to promote his reintegration into the society. The help of a counselor may also be sought wherever necessary. It shall also entail communicating to the panchayat or community development authorities about the background, problems and the needs of the released person to get the cooperation and help of the panchayat in the resettlement of the prisoner. The district committee may also make a reference to a social service organization in the neighboring area where the prisoner is likely to settle after the release. At the planning stages, the following factors are to be considered by the district committee: whether the inmate shall require temporary accommodation until housing arrangements are made. Secondly, assistance in securing an apprenticeship in a workshop, technical institute, industry or trade or getting employment. Thirdly, assistance in starting a cottage industry, a shop, a small business, a poultry farm, beekeeping, a dairy farm, vegetable farming, etc. If the prisoner is suffering from some medical condition like TB, cancer or leprosy, then his or her treatment should be in an outside hospital. Most importantly, making serious efforts to prevent the released convict from relapsing into the dark world of crime. The released prisoner has to be protected from getting associated with anti-social groups and agencies of moral degradation like gambling dens, drinking places and brothels. Dear viewers, now we shall discuss the role of a district probation officer. For the success of this mechanism, the role of a district probation officer is immensely important. Under the Model Prison Manual 2016, an officer of an appropriate rank has to be appointed as a district probation officer in each prison, and he shall be associated with the other agencies. Such officer shall contact the inmate during his admission, quarantine period, and shall try to maintain contact with him or her at least once a month throughout his stay in the institution. It shall be the responsibility of the probation officer to extend all possible assistance in maintaining the inmate's continued relationship with his family, employer, and the community. It is important to note that the district probation officer will intensify his work during the pre-release period. He shall maintain all the prescribed records under the direction of the superintendent. After the release from the institution, the case of a released person shall be followed for a period ranging from 1 to 2 years according to the requirements of the case. Furthermore, as per the Model Prison Manual 2016, the district probation officer shall establish a follow-up study through interviews or correspondence, a 6-monthly report evaluating the released person's adjustments and resettlement shall be prepared by him, and copies of it shall be sent to the correctional institution where the individual had undergone treatment and to the record branch in the prison headquarters. The record branch in the headquarters shall maintain all the cases and follow-up reports according to the central indexing system. Now we shall ponder upon the role of NGOs, the public, business enterprises, and the companies in the aftercare mechanism. It is important to note that social service organizations can play a very important role in the success of the aftercare mechanism by helping the prisoner post-release. Furthermore, the general public needs to be educated to change their negative attitude towards a released convict. The reintegration of the prisoner is possible only if he gets empathy, supports, and a little hand-holding from the society. This is even more important in the case of juvenile delinquents who are released from the special institutions. The economic activity of the released prisoner not only makes him financially independent, it also boosts his morale and helps him earn his livelihood. Thus, commercial and business establishment must come forward to help in this direction. Here, it is noteworthy that the All India Jail Manual Committee 1957 emphasized the importance of aftercare services and recommended that these services be developed as an essential requisite in the correctional field. The Model Prison Manual 2003 also recommended that the Industries Department of the state government formulate schemes for the employment of the released convicts in small-scale industrial units. This aside, the big industrial houses should be motivated at the level of the prison headquarters to give preference in jobs to the released prisoners in the interest of their rehabilitation and social adjustment. It is also envisaged that the companies that are required to spend 2% of their net profit on the corporate social responsibility under the Companies Act must be encouraged to contribute funds towards the rehabilitation of the prisoners. Appropriate steps may also be taken by the government to facilitate the tax deductibility of donations made for this purpose in terms of Section 80G of the Income Tax Act of 1961. Dear listeners, as we all know that a large number of children come in conflict with the law. With regards to such children, we have the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. As we all know that the Juvenile Justice Act ensures the proper care, protection, development, treatment and social reintegration of children in difficult circumstances by adopting a child-friendly approach, keeping in mind the best interests of the children. Chapter 7 of this law deals with the rehabilitation and social reintegration of the children. Section 39 of this Act states that the rehabilitation and social reintegration of the children under this Act shall be undertaken based on the individual care plan of the child, preferably through family-based care such as by restoration to family or guardian with or without supervision or adoption or foster care. For the children in conflict with the law, the process of rehabilitation shall be undertaken in the special homes, a place of safety, a fit facility or with a fit person if placed there by the order of the board. There is no denying the fact that considering the tender age of juvenile delinquents and the greater possibility of relapsing into the dark world of criminality, the state must make every possible endeavor to create a robust and result-oriented aftercare system for such children who have previously come in conflict with the law. In the end, I would like to say that the period immediately after discharge from the correctional institutions is a very difficult one for the offenders, and all the efforts of the correctional officers would be nullified if adequate aftercare is not available. Therefore, in order to ensure the success of all the programs carried out in the correctional institutions, it is a noble task for the correctional administrators to see that the outside agencies are properly communicated to provide necessary aftercare for the discharged offenders. In many countries, there are schemes whereby volunteers from the community are introduced by the correctional officers upon discharge so that they may provide them with the necessary help and guidance after discharge from the prison. It is also the responsibility of the correctional officers to educate the society regarding the relevance and usefulness of the social rehabilitation of the offenders. If the society continues to reject the offenders and not give them a chance to make good, they may very soon revert to a life of crime. If that happens, all the money and effort spent on correctional programs would go in vain. In the end, I would like to conclude by saying the institution is supposed to prepare the offenders to return to the society. What happens to them when the prison gates closes on them is worth knowing. With this, we come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you very much for patience listening.